My daughter-in-law admitted on camera she drugged my sugar. At 5 a.m., the cloud video showed her forcing entry with movers. The lab report said benzodiazepines were in my kitchen container. I watched it live from my Cape Cod house, hands shaking on my phone. I cried once, then I got cold. You know that feeling when your own family turns predator? She thought I had no proof. The police and the DA were already getting my evidence. 4 months earlier, none of this looked criminal. 2 weeks earlier, I would have told you I had a good kid. I'm not saying that now. I keep receipts. And yeah, before you ask, no, I didn't warn her. I set a trap. So let me back up. Because this started with one phone call and one cup of tea, and I swear to God, it changed everything. It was a regular weekday afternoon in Boston, the kind where the sky's gray and the wind off the water cuts right through your coat. I was at my usual salon in Back Bay, halfway through a trim, when my phone buzzed and I saw my son's name. Michael Miller, my only child, my kid. I picked up on the second ring because a mom does that, even when her hair's wrapped in foil and she's got a cape around her neck like a toddler. He sounded excited. That's the only word for it. Mom, he said, I met someone, and right away I knew there was more. When your kid gives you that tone, it's not, I met someone. It's, I met someone and I'm already in deep. I asked, okay, how long have you been seeing her? There was a pause, a tiny one, but I heard it. A few months, he said. A few months can mean 3 months. It can mean 3 weeks. It can mean I met her at a bar last Tuesday and I'm already talking about forever. I didn't say that out loud. I didn't want to be that mom. I wanted to be supportive, sweet, normal, widow mom who isn't clinging. So I smiled at my reflection, kept my voice light, and said, That's nice, honey. What's her name? He told me, Jessica Rodriguez. And he said it like it was already official, like she'd already been sitting at our Thanksgiving table for years. I remember my stylist asking if I wanted layers, and I wasn't really listening because I was trying to place my own son's life in my head. He hadn't mentioned anyone. Not once. No, I'm dating. No, I'm seeing somebody. No, hey, I'm happy. Just, surprise, girlfriend dropped into my lap like a package with no return label. My best friend, Linda Parker, was sitting 2 chairs down getting her roots done, and she raised her eyebrows at me like, oh boy. Linda's the kind of friend who doesn't sugarcoat. She's the one who tells you when your jeans look weird. She's the one who says, that man's a liar, when everyone else is calling him misunderstood. End quote. When I got off the phone, Linda leaned over and whispered, a few months? That's fast. I told her, he's grown. Linda said, grown men still get played. That was the first red flag. Not the girlfriend. Not even the secrecy. It was that little click in my stomach when Linda said it, and I felt my body agree. A mom knows. A couple weeks later, Michael invited me to dinner at his place to meet Jessica. He also asked Linda to come because, in his words, you two are basically attached at the hip anyway. We drove over together, parked in the garage, rode the elevator up, and I remember Linda smoothing her cardigan like she was gearing up for a job interview. That should have told me something too. Michael opened the door, all smiles, and right behind him was Jessica already in motion, already performing. She came at me with this big hug, like we were long-lost relatives, perfume hitting me before her arms did, sweet and heavy, like she wanted to leave a mark. Susan, she said, like she'd known me forever. I've heard so much about you. That line always sounds nice. It also sounds practiced. Their apartment looks staged. I'm not kidding. Throw pillows arranged like a magazine photo, candles lit on the coffee table, a fancy cheese board already laid out like we were on a cooking show. Jessica was polished, hair done, nails perfect, outfit put together in that I'm effortless way that isn't effortless at all. She called Michael babe every other sentence, like she was branding him. I watched her while she talked. Not in a jealous way, in a who are you really way. She asked me about my day, my drive, the weather, all the normal stuff. Then, without missing a beat, she slid into the questions that had nothing to do with getting to know me. "So, you live alone, right?" she said, pouring wine like she was hosting a fundraiser. I answered, "I do." "And you're okay with that?" she asked, eyes on me, but not in a caring way. More like she was testing a story. I shrugged. "I've been alone a long time. I manage." Jessica tilted her head like she felt sorry for me. "That's gotta be hard at your age." There it was. Not after your loss. Not, "I'm sure that's lonely sometimes." No. At your age. Michael didn't flinch. Didn't correct her. Didn't say, "Mom's fine." He just kept smiling, like this was all cute and sweet. "Some women marry for love. Some women marry for paperwork." I didn't know which kind she was yet, but I felt my spine get a little straighter. Dinner was fine. The food was bland, honestly, like she didn't really cook and didn't want to admit it. Chicken that tasted like nothing. Vegetables steamed into mush. Jessica kept asking questions that sounded like concern but landed like inventory. "Do you still drive at night? Do you ever forget appointments? Do you have anyone checking in on you?" Michael laughed at one point and said, "Mom's more organized than I am." Jessica smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's good. It's just, you know, things can change." The nerve. I took a sip of wine, set the glass down, and told myself I was being sensitive. Grief makes you suspicious. That's what I told myself. Then she stood up and said, "I made herbal tea. It'll help you sleep." She said it like it was a gift. She brought out 2 mugs. The tea smelled bitter under the mint, like something medicinal. And the thing that stuck with me was this. She watched the cups, not like someone making sure guests enjoy it, like someone checking dosage. Linda barely touched hers. I saw her fake a sip and set it down. I drank mine because I didn't want to be rude, because I wanted to be normal, because I didn't think my son's girlfriend was going to mess with me. Within 20 minutes, my head felt thick, heavy, like cotton. My vision didn't blur, exactly, but everything felt slow, like my body was running a second behind my brain. I stood up to put my coat on and my knees went soft. Linda caught my elbow and gave me this look that said, "Are you feeling that too?" In the elevator, the silence got loud, just the hum and our breathing. When we got to the garage, I leaned against the car for a second because the concrete felt like it was tilting. Linda snapped, "Susan, what did she put in that tea?" I said, "Stop. Don't be ridiculous." But my mouth felt dry, and I hated that it came out weak. Linda drove me home anyway. She insisted, and in my living room, she hovered like a guard dog while I sat on my couch and tried to act like I wasn't struggling to keep my eyes open. That tea didn't feel like kindness. That night, I slept like I'd been hit with a hammer. The next morning, I woke up with this weird fog still clinging to me. Not hungover, not sick, just off. I texted Michael later, keeping it casual. I wrote, "Dinner was nice. That tea knocked me out." He replied, "Haha, she's big on herbs. She's trying to take care of you." Take care of me. That phrase started showing up a lot after that, like it was a script they both got handed. Over the next couple weeks, Jessica inserted herself into my life like she had always owned a key to it. She'd text me in the morning. "Did you sleep okay?" She'd call at odd times. "Just checking on you." She'd swing by with a little treat and show up with grocery store flowers like we were in a commercial. And every time she came, she'd glance around my apartment, at my furniture, at my framed photos, at my little antiques I'd collected over the years. She didn't look at them like memories. She looked at them like price tags. One afternoon, she said, "You've got such a nice place. How much is something like this worth?" I laughed, because what else do you do when someone asks you that in your own home? "Worth to who?" I said. Jessica smiled and shrugged. "Just curious. Real estate's wild in Boston." I told her it's not for sale. Her smile tightened, like I'd just corrected her on something. Big mistake. Michael started repeating her concerns, like he'd swallowed them whole. Mom, have you thought about downsizing? Mom, maybe you shouldn't be alone so much. Mom, Jessica's worried you're not sleeping. He said, Jessica's worried the way a kid says, my teacher said, when he's trying to guilt you into something. One evening, Michael called and said, we're thinking about the future. I asked, your future? He said, all of us, family stuff. And then he dropped it. We're getting married, he said. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so fast my brain couldn't catch up. You're what? I said. 3 months, he said, like he was announcing a dentist appointment. We want something small, nothing crazy. Then, in the same breath, he asked if I could help with some costs. I'm not proud of this, but I said yes. I did. I transferred about $5,000 because he's my son, and I wanted to be supportive, and I didn't want to be the bitter widow mom who refuses to celebrate love. And because I still believed he had good judgment. Sometimes love makes you stupid. Sometimes being a mom does. A week later, Jessica invited me to lunch. She picked a place near their neighborhood, a little cafe that tries to be fancy, but still serves you a sandwich on a wooden board like it's fine dining. She ordered for the table. That always annoys me. Not enough to start a fight, but enough to notice. When the drinks came, she slid me a lemonade. It tasted too sweet, and there was a bitter aftertaste that didn't belong. I didn't finish it. Jessica kept the conversation soft, almost gentle, like she was stroking a cat. She asked about my daily routine, when I went to the gym, when I paid bills, if I ever missed payments, if I had automatic drafts set up. Then she leaned in and said, it might be safer if Michael could help manage some of that. I stared at her. Manage my bills? She nodded like it was obvious. Just as a backup, for security. Security. That word should come with a warning label. I said, no. Jessica blinked, then recovered. Oh, okay. I just thought. I cut her off. I said no. The air shifted. Michael texted me later that night. Jessica says you seemed upset today. And there it was again. Jessica says. Jessica thinks. Jessica's concerned. I texted back. I'm fine. Then I added, don't let anyone make you talk down to me. He didn't answer that. A couple nights after that, they invited me over again. And this time, Jessica brought out paperwork after dinner, like she was serving dessert. I'm not exaggerating. She set a folder on the table, smoothed it with her hands, and said, this is just something smart people do. It was a power of attorney packet. I felt my face go hot. She said, if anything ever happened, Michael could help you. It's just practical. Michael was sitting there quiet, looking between us like he was watching tennis. I asked, did you two plan this? Jessica laughed like I was being silly. No, Susan, we're just trying to help. Help. Help is what you offer when someone asks. Help isn't what you push on them with legal documents. I said, I'm not signing anything without my own attorney. Jessica's smile fell. Just a flicker. But I saw it. Michael finally spoke up and said, Mom, don't make this a thing. And that hurt more than the folder. Because it was already a thing. They were making it a thing. They were putting my life on paper like I was a problem to solve. I stood up, pushed the folder back toward Jessica, and said, not happening. Jessica's voice got sharper. Why are you being so paranoid? Paranoid. That word is a weapon when you're a woman past 50. It's how people dismiss you without proving anything. I left that night with my stomach tight and my brain spinning, and Linda was the first person I called when I got home. She answered on the first ring and said, tell me. So I did. I told her about the folder, the questions, the tea, the way Jessica watched the cups, the way Michael looked at me like I was being difficult. Linda said, she's setting you up. I whispered, for what? Linda didn't hesitate. To take control. And with that sentence landed like a brick. Here's the controversial part, and I know people have opinions about it. I didn't confront Jessica. I didn't scream at my son. I didn't call the police over a folder and a weird cup of tea. I got quiet. I started paying attention. Be honest. Would you have played it quiet like I did? Comment below. 'Cause I'll tell you this. The minute you accuse someone like that without proof, they flip it on you. They call you unstable. They call you bitter. They call you confused. And suddenly you're defending yourself instead of building a case. Proof beats gaslighting. And I wasn't about to get steamrolled in my own life. The wedding came fast. Too fast. It was all florals and photos and fake smiles. Jessica looked perfect. Michael looked like he was floating. I looked like a mother trying not to ruin her kid's big day while my gut was screaming. At one point during the reception, I stepped away to use the restroom. It was one of those venue bathrooms with fancy soap and little cloth towels like we were in a hotel. And while I was washing my hands, I heard voices on the other side of the door. Jessica's voice, and another woman's voice later. I realized it was her mother. They didn't know I was there. They didn't know I was listening. They were laughing, low and smug, like they were sharing a secret. Jessica said something that turned my blood to ice. "This was the best investment," she said. "That old woman's got money." Then her mother said something back, and Jessica replied, "Everything's gonna be ours." I stood there with wet hands, staring at my own reflection, and I swear my face looked older in that mirror, not because of wrinkles, because betrayal does that. Some people will smile in your face while they plan your life like a hostile takeover. I dried my hands slowly because I needed a second to keep myself from bursting out of that bathroom like a grenade. When I went back out, I found Linda near the bar, and I didn't even try to be subtle. I leaned in and whispered, "I just overheard her." Linda's eyes narrowed. "What'd she say?" I told her, and Linda's jaw clenched so hard I thought she'd crack a tooth. Linda said, "Okay, now we move." That night, when I got home, I sat on my couch in my quiet apartment and stared at the framed photo of Michael as a little kid. Missing front tooth, big smile, arms around my neck. I wanted to call him and scream, "How did you marry this woman?" Then I pictured Jessica's face, calm and innocent, telling Michael, "Your mom's imagining things." And I knew exactly how it would go. So I didn't call him. I called an attorney. Her name was Patricia Collins. Downtown Boston office, sharp as a tack, the kind of woman who wears glasses on a chain and makes you feel safer just by being in the room. I got her number from a friend of Linda's who'd used her for an estate issue. Patricia answered her office line the next morning, and I said, "I think my son's wife is trying to take my assets." There was a beat of silence. Then she said, "Tell me what you've got." I told her everything. The tea, the questions, the folder, the bathroom confession. Patricia didn't interrupt. She just let me talk. When I finished, she said something that made me sit up straight. "If you confront them now without proof," she said, "they'll call you incompetent. And if they file for guardianship, you're playing defense in a system that already assumes older women are confused." That sentence made me nauseous. I asked, "Can they really do that?" Patricia said, "They can try, and they'll bring concern as their cover story. Concern can be a weapon." Patricia told me my next steps like she was laying out a chessboard. Document everything. Save every text. Keep voicemails. Start a timeline of symptoms. And, if I could do it safely, get my own receipts inside my own home. I said, "Are you telling me to install cameras?" Patricia didn't flinch. "I'm telling you to protect yourself." So I did. I went to a big box store out in the suburbs, bought a set of small indoor cameras with audio and cloud storage, and I paid extra for the plan that sends alerts to your phone. I did it on a weekday morning when the store was quiet, and I felt ridiculous pushing a cart with cameras in it like I was planning a spy mission. But then I remembered Jessica's voice in that bathroom. Best investment. And I stopped feeling ridiculous. Linda came over the next day, and we installed them together. Not obvious ones. Not the kind you see mounted in plain sight. Small ones tucked where you don't look unless you're hunting. A corner of the living room. A shelf line facing the hallway. One angled toward the kitchen, one toward my bedroom door because I wasn't stupid. Linda held one in her hand and said, "If she's innocent, she'll never notice." I said, "And if she's not," Linda smiled, cold, "then she'll hang herself." Wrong move. We tested the app. Motion alerts. Audio. Cloud save. I watched the little live feed squares on my phone like they were windows into my own safety. Then Patricia called me and said, "One more thing. It's solve and..." I said, "What?" She said, "Change your locks." So I hired a locksmith. He came in the afternoon, tool belt and all, and swapped the lock on my front door while I stood there pretending this was normal homeowner stuff. The locksmith handed me a new set of keys, and I looked at the old one in my palm. Patricia had told me something that sounded insane until you think like someone who's being hunted. "Leave the old key accessible," she said, "as bait." I swallowed. "You want her to try to use it?" Patricia said, "If she tries, you'll have intent on record." Linda overheard and said, "Oh, I love this." Linda found a spot in my entryway drawer where Jessica had been snooping before, and she slid the old key in there like we were laying cheese for a mouse. I stared at that drawer for a long second. This was the point of no return. Because once you set a trap, you're admitting you believe the worst. And you don't set a trap unless you're ready to watch someone walk right into it. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Hey, Susan, just checking in. Are you feeling okay lately? You seemed tired at the wedding." I stared at it. Then I screenshotted it and sent it to Patricia. Then I sent it to Linda. Then I locked my door, checked my camera app, and sat in the dark living room like I was waiting for a storm. She had no idea. And I mean that. She truly had no idea. Because while she was playing the sweet new wife, my apartment had eyes now. And if she reached for that bait key, game on. I went to bed with my phone on the nightstand, volume up, motion alerts armed, and a sick calm settling over me like a heavy blanket. Then, right as I turned off the lamp, the screen lit up. Motion detected. Cut to black. You'd have checked the feed, too. That motion alert wasn't a raccoon. It was Jessica. And you know that split second when your stomach drops and your hands go cold? Yeah, that. My phone was glowing on the nightstand like it was accusing me. I tapped the camera app, and the little live feed popped up in grainy nighttime mode. Front door, entryway. My hallway, Jessica Rodriguez slid into frame like she owned the place. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't acting sweet. She was moving fast, shoulders tight, scanning the room like she was counting exits. One hand had a tote bag. The other hand was up near her hair, like she was checking for cameras without making it obvious. She'd used the old key. So yeah, the bait worked. Wrong house. I sat up so hard my lower back popped. The bedroom was dark, but I could feel my pulse in my throat. A normal person would have called 911 right then. I didn't. Not yet. Because here's the thing. If she left without doing anything, she'd swear she never came by. If I spooked her, she'd tighten up and get smarter. I wanted her comfortable. Comfortable criminals get sloppy. I watched her tiptoe past my living room, then pause at my kitchen doorway, and she went straight for the sugar, not my jewelry box, not my laptop, not my checkbook, my sugar bowl. My mouth went dry. She set her tote on the counter and pulled out a little pill organizer, the kind with days of the week printed on it. She popped it open with her thumb like she'd done it 1,000 times. Then she shook something into her palm. Small, white. She leaned over my sugar bowl, and her hand dipped in. Done. I felt my face go numb, like my brain was trying to protect me from what my eyes were seeing. She wasn't worried. She was dosing me. Cold truth. She didn't need my signature if she could make me look confused. And I watched her do it. After she finished, she wiped the rim of the sugar bowl with the edge of her sleeve, like she was cleaning fingerprints off a crime scene. Then she opened my entryway drawer. The drawer with the bait key, she stared at it for half a second, like she couldn't believe it worked, like she couldn't believe I was that easy. Then she slipped the old key right back where she found it. She wanted it to look untouched. Nice try. Her eyes flicked up, straight toward the camera angle, and my heart punched. But she didn't see it. She grabbed her tote, took one last sweep around the room, and slid out the door like smoke. The lock clicked, and my apartment went quiet again. I just sat there staring at my phone screen, frozen in my own bed, listening to the radiator tick like nothing happened. You ever realize you're not dealing with family drama? You're dealing with a person who's willing to hurt you? Because that's where I was. My thumb hovered over the save clip button, and I hit it 3 times like I didn't trust technology. Then I screen recorded the playback too, because I didn't trust anything except redundancy. Receipts beat denial. At 2:14 a.m., I texted Linda Parker. "Wake up." She came in. Linda called immediately, voice rough with sleep. "Who came in?" "Jessica," I said, and she went for my sugar bowl. There was a pause on the line, then Linda went sharp. "Are you kidding me? Did you call the cops?" "Not yet," I said. "I have video." Linda exhaled, long and ugly. Okay, don't touch anything. I'm coming over." I told her, "Don't drive over half asleep. I'm locking down. I'll meet you in the morning." Linda muttered, "This woman is out of her mind." No, she was calculated, and that was worse. I barely slept after that. Not because I was scared of my apartment, because I was running the footage over and over in my head, trying to understand the logic of it. Why sugar? Why now? And then it hit me, plain as day. If I started acting foggy, if I stumbled, if I forgot words, Jessica could play heroine while she put papers in front of my son. Mom needs help. If you want to this, Mom isn't safe alone. Mom's confused. That word again. Confused. Dementia was the costume. Morning came. Gray Boston light leaking through my blinds. The first thing I did was dump my entire sugar bowl into a gallon zip bag with a spoon, like I was handling evidence. Then I taped it shut and wrote the date and time on it with a Sharpie. Then I poured a fresh bag of sugar into a different container and shoved it to the back of the pantry, where no helpful visitor would find it. I wasn't eating anything in that bowl, not a grain. Linda showed up around 9 with a coffee in one hand and a face like a thunderstorm. I didn't even greet her properly. I just held my phone out and said, "Watch." Linda watched the clip with her jaw clenched, and when Jessica's hand went into the sugar bowl, Linda's eyes went wide. "Oh my God," she whispered. "She's trying to drug you." I nodded once. I couldn't even get words out for a second. Linda snapped out of it and started pacing my kitchen like she was trying to walk off a punch. "Call Patricia, now." So I did. Patricia Collins answered like she'd been expecting it. "Susan," I said. "She broke into my apartment last night." Patricia's voice stayed calm, but it dropped lower. "Do you have proof?" "Yes," I said. "Video, audio, clear as day." And she tampered with my sugar bowl. That got a beat of silence. Patricia said, "Bring the footage to my office. Bring the sugar. Do not confront her." I almost laughed. "Oh, don't worry. I'm not giving her the satisfaction." Linda leaned in, loud enough for Patricia to hear through the phone. "She's a psycho." Patricia didn't argue. She just said, "Get here in an hour." So we moved. I put the sugar bag in a paper grocery sack, like it was contraband. I wore gloves because Linda insisted, and honestly, she wasn't wrong. We grabbed my laptop, my phone, and a printed timeline Linda made me start the night before. Yes, my best friend made me a timeline at midnight like we were building a case against the mob. Bless her. Downtown Boston was its usual mess. Honking, delivery trucks, pedestrians walking like they own the crosswalk. Linda parked in a garage near Patricia's building, and we took the elevator up in stiff silence. Patricia's office smelled like coffee and paper and seriousness. She led us into a conference room and shut the door. "Show me," she said. I opened my laptop, pulled up the clip, and hit play. Jessica appeared on screen again, slipping into my apartment with the old key. Then the sugar, the wiping, the drawer. Patricia watched without blinking. When it ended, Patricia reached for a notepad and wrote something down slowly, like she was translating chaos into legal language. Then she looked at me and said, "This changes everything. Vindication feels weird when the truth is this ugly." Patricia asked, "Did you consume any sugar from that bowl recently? Coffee, tea, anything?" I thought back to the last week. "I had coffee yesterday afternoon." Linda blurted, "You were tired. You said you felt off." Patricia nodded once. "Okay, we're going to treat this like evidence in a criminal case, because it may be one." Hearing that out loud made my skin prickle. Patricia continued, "First, we copy and preserve the video files. Second, we document the forced entry. Third, we're going to talk to your building about access logs and any camera footage in the hallway." I said she used a key. Patricia's eyes sharpened. "Which establishes planning." Linda leaned in and whispered to me, "She's done." Not yet, but she was walking toward it. Patricia had me forward the saved clip to her secure email, plus the screen recording, plus the timestamps. She made me write a sworn statement describing what I saw and when I saw it. And she asked me questions that felt invasive but necessary, like she was building a wall around me. Any history of sleep medication? No. Any history of memory problems? No. Any other times you felt sedated after interacting with Jessica? I hesitated, then said, "The tea. At their apartment." Patricia's pen paused. "Tell me about the tea." So I told her. How Jessica watched the cups, how my knees went soft, how Linda insisted on driving me home. Linda nodded hard, like she'd been waiting for me to say it with a witness in the room. Patricia didn't look surprised. She looked angry. She said, "Susan, I want you to go get a blood test today. Not tomorrow. Today." I blinked. "For what?" Patricia said, "If there's anything in your system, time matters." That sentence hit different. That wasn't lawyer talk. That was survival talk. So we did that too. Linda drove me to an urgent care in Brookline because I didn't want to sit in an ER for 8 hours, and Patricia called ahead to make sure I could request a toxicology screen. You want to talk about humiliating? Sitting under fluorescent lights, explaining to a nurse that your son's wife might be drugging you. The nurse didn't roll her eyes. She didn't doubt me. She just got quiet and said, "Okay, we'll take this seriously." Thank God for one person in the world acting normal. They drew blood. They took urine. They asked if I felt safe at home. I looked at Linda and said, "Not with her in my orbit." After that, Patricia called again with a new instruction. "We're filing a police report today, not because we want drama, because we want a paper trail." A paper trail is the difference between she's paranoid and this is documented. So we went to the Boston police station in my neighborhood, and I walked in with my head high and my stomach twisted. A younger officer took my statement while I slid my laptop around and showed the footage. His face changed when Jessica used the key. It changed again when she went for the sugar. He said, "Ma'am, that's not normal." No kidding. He asked for copies. Patricia had already told me to bring a USB drive, so I did. Linda squeezed my shoulder like I was walking into a fight. The officer said, "We'll open a case for unlawful entry and suspected tampering. Do you want to request an emergency lock change?" I said, "Already done." The officer nodded, like he respected that. Good. Then, while we were still there, my phone buzzed. Michael Miller. Of course. I stared at the screen, and Linda mouthed, "Don't." But I answered anyway, because I needed to hear his tone. Michael sounded tense. "Mom," Jessica said, "you're not answering her. She's worried." There it was. The same script. I kept my voice flat. "I'm fine." End quote. He exhaled, like I was making his life hard. "Can you just call her back? She's trying to help." I looked at the police report form on the desk in front of me and almost laughed. "Help," I said. "I'm at the police station, Michael." Dead silence on the line. Then he said, "What? Why?" I didn't give him everything. Not yet. I said, "Because someone entered my apartment without permission." Michael's voice went tight. "Are you accusing Jessica?" I said, "I'm stating facts." "Yes." He snapped, "Mom, this is insane." And there it was, again. insane, paranoid, confused. You know that look people give you when they're lying straight to your face? You can hear it in their voice, too. I said, I'm not arguing. I'm handling it. Michael started to talk, then stopped. Like someone was standing next to him. Then I heard Jessica's voice in the background, faint but sharp. Tell her she needs to calm down. I felt my fingernails dig into my palm. Michael said, Mom, we're coming by later to talk. No. No, you're not. I said, do not come to my apartment. Michael hissed, why are you acting like this? And I said, because I finally see what's happening. Then I hung up. Linda stared at me like she was half proud and half terrified. I wasn't proud. I was done. Patricia warned me this would happen. The social part, the framing. Once Jessica realized I wasn't folding, she was going to go public with the concern story. And she did. Fast. By that afternoon, my neighbor in 3B, a sweet older guy named Frank, knocked on my door and said, Susan, you okay? I got a weird call. I froze. A call from who? Frank shrugged. Some woman. Said she was family. Asked if you've been forgetting stuff. Forgetting stuff? Jessica was recruiting witnesses. Linda's eyes narrowed. What did you tell her? Frank looked uncomfortable. I told her you're sharp as a tack and she needs to mind her business. 18. Bless Frank, too. After Frank left, Linda said, she's building a case. I said, I know. And then the building manager called. His name was Tom. And he usually called about package theft or somebody propping the lobby door open. Not about my mental state. Tom cleared his throat and said, Susan, I'm calling because your daughter-in-law contacted us. She said she's concerned about your safety. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Did she? And 7, Tom continued carefully. She asked if we could provide her access if she couldn't reach you. Linda snatched my phone and put it on speaker. Because Linda is not built for politeness when someone's trying to steal your life. Linda said, absolutely not. Susan is fine. And you need to document that request. Tom sounded nervous. We didn't give her anything. But I wanted you to know. I took the phone back and said, Tom, thank you. If she calls again, tell her to contact my attorney. End. Tom exhaled like he was relieved to have instructions. Will do. So now I had it. Not just the break-in and the sugar. Now I had outreach. A coordinated story. A narrative push. Patricia called it conditioning the environment. Jessica was trying to make my world echo her lie. That night, Patricia had me do one more thing. Set a controlled test. She said, Susan, if she's tampering, she'll do it again. We want to capture it cleanly, with context. Is now. I said, you want me to let her back in my kitchen? Patricia said, I want you to control the variables. You will not consume anything. You will not be alone. And you will not confront. Linda smiled like she'd been waiting for permission to go full detective. So we staged it. The next morning, I texted Michael, you can stop by for 10 minutes. Linda will be here. I made sure Linda was in the message indirectly, like a warning label. Michael replied almost immediately, okay, noon. And Jessica didn't text me. Not once. But she showed up anyway. Noon hit. I had my cameras live. Linda sat at my dining table with her arms crossed, visible from the living room camera like a silent witness. And I kept my hands steady even though I wanted to throw up. Knock on the door. I opened it, and there was Michael, looking stressed, and Jessica right behind him, holding a grocery bag like she was auditioning for Helpful Daughter-in-Law of the Year. As Noni, Jessica put on that bright smile the second she saw my face. Susan! Oh my gosh, I've been so worried. Worried is what people say when they're about to manipulate you. I stepped back and let them in. Linda didn't stand up. She just stared. Jessica's smile faltered for a fraction of a second when she saw Linda. Then she recovered and chirped. Hi, Linda. Linda said, Jessica. One word. Flat. Like a judge. Michael tried to play mediator. Can we just talk? I said, sure. Talk. Haxley. Jessica immediately started performing. Susan, you scared us. You wouldn't answer. You mentioned the police. I mean, what is happening? I kept my voice calm. What's happening is I'm protecting myself. Jessica clutched her chest like I slapped her. From me? Are you serious right now? Michael looked at me like I'd embarrassed him. Mom, she's been trying to help. She brought you groceries. Jessica lifted the bag like proof of sainthood. Then she pivoted, smooth as oil. We just want to make sure you're okay. You've been tired. You've been off. Maybe you should see someone. There it was. The slide into competence. Linda leaned forward slightly. She already did. Jessica blinked. Excuse me? Linda said Susan went to urgent care, toxicology screen. You know, just to be safe. Jessica's face went still. Just for a second. But I saw it. The tightness around her eyes, the split-second calculation. Then she laughed, light and fake. That's dramatic. End quote. I shrugged. Maybe. But I like knowing what's in my body. Michael frowned. Mom, why would you even... Jessica cut him off with a hand on his arm, like he was a dog pulling at a leash. It's fine, babe. That little babe was a warning to him, not affection. Jessica turned back to me, voice syrupy again. Susan, you're not thinking clearly. I'm saying this with love. You need support. Support. Control. Same word in different packaging. So I gave her just enough rope. I said, if you want to help, make coffee. I'm tired. Jessica lit up because she thought she'd won something. Of course. And she walked straight into my kitchen like she belonged there. Linda's eyes met mine for half a second. Are we doing this? I gave the tiniest nod. Jessica set the grocery bag down and started pulling things out like she was staging my pantry. Soup cans, crackers, tea bags. Of course there were tea bags. Then she reached for my sugar bowl, the same sugar bowl. And she paused. Just a pause. A flick of uncertainty. Because last time she'd been alone. This time she had an audience. So she adjusted. She didn't pull out the pill organizer. She didn't dump anything in her palm. She went for something subtler. Jessica opened my trash cabinet under the sink, like she was looking for a fresh liner. And her hand disappeared out of view for a second. The kitchen camera caught it. Then she stood up and slid something into her pocket. Linda's eyebrows lifted. She'd seen it too. Jessica turned back to the counter and popped open the sugar bowl. She stirred it with a spoon like she was mixing. Then she set the spoon down, wiped the rim again, and started the coffee. I said nothing. I let it happen. Because the whole point was to let her show herself. Michael wandered in and asked, What are you doing? Jessica laughed too loud. Making coffee, your mom asked. One, Michael gave me a look like I was being difficult for asking for coffee. Like I was the problem. Some people will believe a liar just because it's easier. When Jessica carried 2 mugs out, she brought one to Michael first, not me. Then she brought one to me with both hands like it was sacred. Here you go, Susan. Decaf. Decaf. Like she was managing my heart rate now. I didn't drink it. I held it, smelled it, set it down untouched. Jessica's smile tightened again. Aren't you going to drink it? I looked at her and said, Not right now. Michael said, Mom. Linda cut in, calm as ice. She said, Not right now. Jessica's eyes flashed irritation. Then she forced a chuckle. Okay, I just worry. She kept pushing, though. You know, a lot of older women don't realize when they need help. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Older women. There it was again. That little jab disguised as compassion. I leaned forward slightly and said, Let's be clear. I run my own life. Jessica stared like she couldn't believe I said it in front of Michael. Michael looked uncomfortable, but he didn't defend me. He just rubbed his forehead like he was tired of me. Then Jessica went for the kill shot. she said. We've been talking about maybe having you spend more time at your Cape Cod place. It's quieter, less stress. You could rest. And we could help manage things here. Manage things here. My apartment. My accounts. My life. I stared at my son, waiting for him to say, "No, Mom's fine." Instead, Michael said, "It might be good for you." That was the moment I stopped hoping he'd snap out of it on his own. Linda's voice stayed level, but it had bite. "Susan doesn't need permission to go anywhere." Jessica's cheeks flushed. "Linda, with all due respect, this is family." Linda smiled, small and mean. "Exactly." Jessica stood up like she was ending a meeting. "Okay, we'll give you space. But, Susan, I'm telling you, we're going to do what's best. Even if you don't like it." That sentence was the truth. Michael stood too, following her like he was tethered. At the door, Jessica turned back and did the soft voice again. "Please call me later. I love you. Love doesn't break into your apartment at night." After they left, the second the lock clicked, Linda and I looked at each other. Linda said, "Kitchen." Now, we went straight to the trash cabinet under the sink. I opened it, pulled the bin out, and started moving stuff carefully, and there it was, tucked down the side like she tried to hide it. A small prescription bottle, not mine, label half peeled, like she didn't want it readable. But the pharmacy sticker was still visible enough to see the medication class and the patient name, Jessica Rodriguez. Linda whispered, "She carried her own meds into your house." My throat went tight. "She's not dosing herself." End quote. Linda grabbed a clean plastic bag, and we sealed the bottle like it was radioactive. Then I pulled up the kitchen camera footage and rewound to the exact moment Jessica bent into the cabinet. We watched her hand dip. We watched her pocket something. We watched her stir my sugar like she was mixing poison into cake batter. And we watched her wipe the rim. Again, I sat down at my table so fast my knees hit the chair. My brain was loud, but my voice came out calm. "She's done this before," I said. Linda nodded. "And she's going to keep doing it until it works." I called Patricia. Patricia answered, and I didn't waste a second. We found her prescription bottle under my sink, and I have footage of her messing with my sugar again. Patricia's tone turned razor sharp. "Do you have the bottle secured?" "Yes." "Do you have the video preserved?" "Yes." Patricia exhaled once. "Susan, listen to me. This is no longer just unlawful entry or financial coercion. This is suspected poisoning." My skin crawled. Patricia said, "Bring the bottle to my office immediately. I'm contacting the detective on your report and the DA's intake line." Da. That word landed heavy. Linda leaned over and whispered. She thought she was being slick. I looked at my phone, then at the sealed bag on my table, and all I could think was this. She didn't just want my money. She wanted me impaired. Maybe I'm petty, but I'm petty with proof. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was a text from Michael. "Mom, Jessica is scared. You need to stop making things up and get help." I stared at that message until my eyes burned. Then I typed one line back. "Tell her the cameras say hi." Cut to black. And yeah, you'd have driven straight to Patricia's office too. They didn't just want my money. They wanted a judge to hand them my life. And if you've never had your own kid look at you like you're confused, you don't forget it. Done. That text I sent, "Tell her the cameras say hi," wasn't a threat. It was a warning shot. Because the second Jessica realized I had proof, she was going to sprint for paperwork. Patricia Collins had me in her office within the hour, and she didn't do the comfort thing. She went straight to strategy. "Susan," she said, tapping her pen on the table, "we're building 2 cases at once, criminal and civil." I asked, "Civil? Meaning what exactly?" Patricia looked me dead in the eye. Guardianship, capacity, control. There it was. The word nobody wants attached to their name. Guardianship is a fancy way of saying, you don't get to decide anymore. Patricia called the detective handling my report, Detective Mark Davis, and put him on speaker. Linda sat beside me, arms crossed, like she was ready to bite someone. Patricia said, "Detective, I'm sending you video evidence of unlawful entry and suspected tampering. We also recovered a prescription bottle left in my client's home." Detective Davis didn't sound shocked. He sounded focused. "Ma'am, keep everything bagged. Don't touch anything barehanded, and don't communicate with the suspect directly." Patricia said, "Already done." Then she dropped the next bomb on me like it was a to-do list item. "We're getting you a forensic psych evaluation this week," she said. I blinked. "A what?" "A competency evaluation," Patricia said. "Voluntary, proactive, by a reputable doctor. We get ahead of their story." Linda muttered, "They're not painting you senile." Patricia nodded once. "Exactly. Here's the thing people don't tell you. Truth isn't enough. You need paperwork that speaks louder than a liar." So that afternoon, Patricia booked me with the forensic psychiatrist and Boston doctor. Daniel Harris. Big hospital affiliation, clean reputation, the kind of guy judges actually listen to. I showed up 2 days later with Linda sitting in the waiting room like my bodyguard. The office felt clinical in that way that makes your skin crawl, muted colors, quiet music, magazines, nobody reads. Dr. Harris came out, shook my hand, and said, "Susan Miller." I stood up and said, "That's me." End quote. He looked me over, and I could tell he was already assessing my posture, my eye contact, my cadence. That's his job. I didn't take it personally. I took it seriously. Inside his office, he started with the basics: date, time, address, who the president is, what year it is, then memory exercises, then logic questions. Then he asked about my daily life: bills, appointments, cooking, driving, medications. He wasn't rude. He was thorough. At one point he said, "Why are you requesting this evaluation?" I didn't get emotional. I didn't rant. I said, "My son's wife is trying to claim I'm incompetent so she can control my assets. I'm here to cut that off." Dr. Harris paused, then nodded slowly, like that made sense. "Okay," he asked, "do you feel unsafe?" I said, "Yes. And I have video evidence to support why." Dr. Harris's eyebrows lifted a fraction. "Video evidence. Hidden cameras," I said. "Cloud storage. Time-stamped. Channer." He didn't smile, but his eyes sharpened. All right. The evaluation took about 90 minutes. When it was over, Dr. Harris stood up and said, "You're very clear. I don't see cognitive impairment based on what we did today." My throat tightened, not because I doubted myself, but because hearing it out loud felt like armor clicking into place. Paper beats whispers. Patricia told me the written report would be ready within a week. She also told me to assume Jessica wasn't sitting still. And she was right. That same evening, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Jessica. I didn't pick up. I never picked up. I let it go to voicemail, like Patricia instructed. Jessica's voice was sweet at first. "Susan, honey, I'm worried. You're spiraling. Please call me." Then it shifted just a little. "If you don't talk to us, we'll have to take steps for your safety." Steps. That's not love. That's a threat wrapped in a bow. Linda listened to it with me and said, "Save that. If you act blend for minds, already saved, already forwarded to Patricia, already logged with date and time." Patricia had me start building what she called the evidence ladder. Every text, every voicemail, every time Jessica tried to recruit people around me. My neighbor Frank, my building manager Tom, even a random call to my hair salon asking if I'd been forgetful. Yes. She called my salon. I wasn't dealing with one sneaky woman. I was dealing with a smear campaign. So we didn't just collect receipts. We started changing the board. The next move was money. Patricia said, "How much do you have liquid, savings, checking?" I told her the truth. Around $53,000 in savings, plus regular checking for bills. I wasn't wealthy, But I wasn't broke either. Boston isn't cheap, and I'd been careful. Patricia said, "We're moving it." I stared at her. "All of it?" "Most of it," she said. "New account, new bank, quiet transfer, and we locked down access. No joint anything. No authorized user. Nothing." Linda's eyes lit up. "Good," Patricia added, "and we update your estate plan immediately. Will, healthcare proxy, everything. Because if something happens to you and your son is still married to Jessica, she gets a seat at the table." That sentence made my stomach flip. Michael is my son. I love him. But he'd already shown me he could be influenced. And when money and control are involved, love doesn't protect you from bad decisions. Some people say that's cold. I say it's reality. So yeah, 2 mornings later, Linda and I drove to a different bank across town, parked in a garage, and walked in like we were doing a normal errand. My hands were steady when I opened the account. My hands were steady when I signed the papers. My hands were steady when I initiated a transfer for $53,000. But my heart was not steady. Because you know what it feels like? It feels like cutting the cord. It feels like admitting my own child might not protect me. And I hated that. Patricia told me to keep the transfer confirmation pages. Printed, digital, multiple copies. She wanted a clean paper trail showing I moved my money while I was fully competent. So I printed everything. Then I locked it in a fireproof pouch in my closet behind winter coats. Because this wasn't a game anymore. This was a siege. While we were at it, Patricia had me freeze my credit and pull my credit report. Because if Jessica had been sniffing around my mail, my drawer, my personal info, she could open credit lines in my name. The nerve. No new accounts popped up, thank God. But that didn't relax me. It just told me she hadn't used that weapon yet. The next weapon came from my own front door. 2 days after the bank transfer, my building manager, Tom, called again. His voice was tight. "Susan, I need you to come down here when you can." I asked, "Why?" Tom hesitated. "There's a realtor in the lobby asking for access to your unit." My stomach flipped. "A realtor?" I repeated. "For my unit?" Tom said, "They're claiming they have permission to do a walkthrough." Linda was standing in my kitchen listening, and she mouthed, "Oh my God." I said, "Tom, do not let anyone up. Tell them to leave and document everything." Tom exhaled, "Already holding them here." I grabbed my coat and keys and headed downstairs with Linda right behind me. In the lobby, there was a woman in a blazer holding a clipboard and a little branded folder. Next to her was Jessica Rodriguez, smiling like she was running the show. Michael was there too. Seeing my son in my lobby with a realtor felt like getting slapped in public. Jessica stepped forward like she was greeting me at a barbecue. "Susan, good, you're here." I didn't smile. "Why is there a realtor in my building?" Jessica's smile didn't move. "We're just exploring options." "Down options," I repeated. Michael tried to soften it. "Mom, it's not like that." I looked at him. "Then explain it." Jessica jumped in before he could. "You've been stressed. You've been erratic. We thought maybe it would be easier for you to sell this place and focus on your Cape Cod house." Focus on Cape Cod. Meaning get me out of Boston, away from my routines, away from witnesses. Jessica added, "You could move to a facility near the beach. It'd be peaceful." Facility. She said it like she was recommending a spa, not a place where people park you and forget you. I watched the realtor's face as Jessica talked. The realtor looked uncomfortable, like she wasn't sure what she'd walked into. Tom stood behind the desk, eyes wide, pretending to shuffle papers while he listened. And the cameras? The lobby cameras weren't mine, but my phone camera was. Linda stepped slightly to the side and started recording, subtle, like she was filming Vacation, but with murder in her eyes. Jessica said, "We're trying to help you." I said, "You're trying to sell my home." Michael's jaw clenched. "Mom, you're being dramatic." I turned to him, slow. "Your wife brought a realtor to my building." Jessica cut in, voice rising just a notch. Because you're not safe alone, Susan. You're not thinking clearly. There it was again. Confused, not safe, not thinking clearly. And I saw the play. If I blew up in the lobby, she'd point and say, "See?" So I didn't. I stayed calm. I said, "The answer is no. You do not have permission. You will not enter my unit." Jessica's smile cracked. "Susan." "No," I said again. "And if you come near my door, the police will be involved." Michael scoffed like I'd said something insane, but the realtor's face changed. The realtor took a step back like she suddenly wanted nothing to do with this. The realtor cleared her throat. "Ma'am, I was told there was authorization." "There isn't," I said, still calm, "and I'm asking you to leave." The realtor nodded quickly. "Understood." Jessica snapped, "Wait." But the realtor was already backing away. Jessica turned on me, eyes hot. "You're making a scene." I almost laughed. "No, Jessica, you did." Tom stepped in, voice careful. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises." "Ease." Jessica stared like she couldn't believe a building manager was speaking to her like that. Then she grabbed Michael's arm and yanked him toward the door like he was luggage. Michael didn't look at me. Not once. That hurt more than the realtor ever could. Outside the lobby doors, Linda muttered, "She's selling it already." And right then, my phone buzzed. Emotion alert. From my apartment, my stomach dropped because I wasn't home. I opened the camera app with shaking fingers and pulled up the live feed. Jessica had left the lobby, but she hadn't left me alone. On the screen, my kitchen camera showed movement near the counter. A shadow, a hand. Then the living room camera caught it. Jessica was in my apartment. Again, with a key. Linda leaned in so close her hair brushed my cheek. "No way." Tom was watching my face change and said, "Susan, what is it?" I didn't answer. I was locked on my phone. Jessica moved fast through my living room and went straight to my kitchen, like she had a checklist. She pulled a small vial from her pocket, tiny glass, clear liquid inside. And she lifted the lid on my sugar container, not the old sugar bowl, the new container I'd tucked away. My blood went cold. She'd searched my pantry before. She knew where I hid things. She tipped the vial. Clear liquid poured into my sugar like it was nothing, like she was seasoning a meal. Then she stirred it with a spoon and wiped the rim with her sleeve again. Same ritual, same cleanup, same arrogance. Linda whispered, "That's poison." I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew what it meant. She wasn't trying to scare me. She was trying to change my brain. And she did it while a realtor was still in the lobby downstairs, like she didn't care anymore. Patricia had told me, when liars get cornered, they get reckless. Jessica was proving her right. I hit save clip so hard my thumb hurt. Then I called Patricia with my other hand. Patricia answered immediately. "Susan? She's in my apartment right now," I said, voice tight. And she just poured a vial into my sugar. Patricia didn't pause. "Where are you?" "In the lobby," I said. "I'm watching it live." Patricia said, "Call 911 right now, and do not confront her." Tom's eyes widened when he heard 911, and he stepped closer like he wanted to help but didn't know how. Linda took my phone for half a second and hit speaker so Tom could hear Patricia too. Patricia said loud and clear, "Susan, call 911 and tell them it's an active, unlawful entry and suspected poisoning attempt." That phrase made Tom go pale. So yeah, I called 911. When the operator answered, my voice surprised me. Calm, clear, like I was reporting a fire. "I'm in the lobby of my building," I said. "My daughter-in-law is inside my apartment without permission. I'm watching her on camera. She just poured a liquid into my sugar container. I need police dispatched." The operator asked for my address, my unit number, description of the suspect. I gave it all. Then she asked, "Are you safe?" I looked around the lobby. Security desk, glass doors, Tom, Linda, cameras everywhere. "I'm safe," I said. "But she's inside my home." The operator said, "Officers are on the way." Tom finally spoke, voice low. "She used the elevator. We can see it on the building camera." Good. More proof? Linda leaned toward me and whispered, "You see why you didn't confront her in the beginning?" I nodded. My throat felt tight. Yeah, I see. We watched the live feed like it was a horror movie nobody could turn off. Jessica paced through my kitchen, checked my drawers, snapped photos of my documents. Again, yes, she did. Then she grabbed a small velvet box from my bedroom dresser and shoved it into her tote. That box held my late husband's anniversary watch. My chest tightened so hard it felt like I couldn't breathe. That was the moment it stopped being money. That was my life. Jessica headed for the door, and right as she reached it, my hallway camera caught flashing lights through the peephole window. Boston police. 2 officers in the hallway, moving fast. Jessica froze. You could see it in her posture, the little stiffening of her shoulders, the way her head snapped like a hunted animal. Then she did what liars always do when they get caught. She tried to play innocent. She opened the door like she'd been invited. One officer held up a hand and said something firm. I couldn't hear it clearly, but I saw the stance. The authority, the no-nonsense. Jessica started talking with her hands, pointing, acting offended. Then she reached into her tote like she was going to pull out paperwork. And I knew she was about to flash something fake. Patricia had warned me about that too. They'll wave papers around like they're magic. The officer stepped closer, and Jessica's face shifted. I watched her try to talk her way out, watched her fail. Then her wrist got grabbed, and she started to pull back. Then the second officer stepped in, and in the grainy black and white footage, I watched my daughter-in-law get put in handcuffs in my hallway. Linda let out a sharp breath. Finally, Tom looked like he'd just watched a car accident. Oh my God. They said now in that one. And me? I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen and felt this cold, clean clarity. She chose this. After the officers took Jessica away, Detective Davis called me within minutes. He sounded like he was moving while he talked boots on concrete, radios squawking. "Ma'am, we have her detained," he said. "We're securing your unit and collecting the container she tampered with. Do you have the footage?" "Yes," I said. "Everything is saved and time-stamped." He said, "Good. Don't delete anything. And don't post anything." I almost laughed. "I'm not posting. I'm trying to survive." Detective Davis asked, "Did she take anything?" I swallowed. My husband's watch. And she photographed documents. He said, "We'll inventory what we can and treat this as evidence. Your attorney already contacted the DA's office." Duh. Hearing it again made it real. Linda gripped my elbow and whispered, "You did this right." I looked at her. I didn't do this. She did. Won that mail. Won that. That afternoon, Patricia arranged a private lab test on the sugar container sample because we weren't waiting around. She had Linda and me glove up, bag the container, and drop it at a courier pickup like we were in some true crime documentary. Then we waited, and waiting is brutal when you already know the answer. 2 days later, Patricia called me and said, "Susan, I have the lab report." My stomach flipped. "Okay." Patricia's voice went tight. "Benzodiazepines. Significant levels. Aiden." There it was. Black and white. Not herbal tea. Not stress. Not getting older. A sedative. My hands went cold. And Linda, listening on speaker, swore under her breath. Patricia said, "This supports your symptoms. It supports the video, and it destroys any claim that you're naturally confused." I asked, "What happens now?" Patricia said, "Now we push criminal charges hard, and we brace for their civil counterattack." Counterattack. That word landed like a punch because I already knew what it would look like. Sure enough, that same night, a new voicemail hit my phone, this time from Michael. His voice sounded strained, like he'd been crying or yelling. "Mom, what did you do?" "Jessica says you set her up. She says you're sick. We're going to have to take legal steps if you won't cooperate." "We." He said, "We." My own son put himself on her team. I stared at the ceiling for a long time after that voicemail. Not crying, not thinking, just staring. Then the next morning, it happened. I was at my Cape Cod house, yes. I'd gone down there for a couple days to breathe and be somewhere Jessica couldn't easily access when there was a knock at the door. Not a friendly knock, a professional knock. Linda was with me, thank God. She looked through the window and said, "That's not a neighbor." Outside was a man in a windbreaker holding a clipboard. Process server. Linda opened the door just enough. "Can I help you?" he asked. "Susan Miller?" My stomach dropped. Linda looked at me, then back at him. "She's inside." The man held out an envelope. "You've been served." I took it with steady hands, because I refused to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me shake. Inside was a petition for a court-ordered capacity evaluation, filed by my son and his wife. They hit back, cut to black. And yeah, you'd have opened that envelope with your hands shaking too. That envelope they served me didn't just threaten a court date. It threatened my freedom. And you know that tight feeling in your chest when you realize your own kid is willing to sign paperwork against you? Yeah, that. Patricia Collins told me to stop staring at the petition and start moving. They filed. Now we answer. I wanted to throw the whole thing into my Cape Cod fireplace and pretend it never happened. But that's not how courts work, and Jessica Rodriguez knew it. She was counting on me panicking. She was counting on me looking unstable. So I did the opposite. Patricia had me drive back into Boston the next morning, straight to her office, with every piece of evidence we'd stacked so far. Video files. The private lab report showing benzodiazepines in my sugar. The urgent care paperwork. The police report number. The bagged prescription bottle. And the appointment confirmation for Dr. Daniel Harris, the forensic psychiatrist who'd evaluated me. Linda Parker rode with me because Linda doesn't do supportive texts. Linda does boots on the ground. Patricia spread everything out on her conference table, like we were building a war board. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even look stressed. She just started labeling. "Civil petition," she said, tapping the served paperwork. "They're claiming you're incapacitated." Then she tapped my lab report. "Criminal conduct. Poisoning attempt." Then she tapped the camera stills. "Unlawful entry." She looked up at me. "Susan, this isn't a family misunderstanding. This is a strategy." That was the first time I let myself say the ugly truth out loud. "She's trying to get guardianship," I said. Patricia nodded. "And your son signed it because she fed him a story," Linda muttered. "He's a grown man. He still signed." I flinched at that, because it was true. And it hurt. Patricia didn't let me spiral. She said, "We're filing an immediate response. We're attaching the psych evaluation as soon as it lands. And we're requesting a protective order to keep Jessica away from you and your home." A protective order sounded dramatic until you remember she'd already broken into my apartment and dosed my pantry. So yeah, protective order. Patricia told me something else that made my stomach twist. "In these cases," she said, "judges sometimes issue temporary orders fast. They think they're keeping everyone safe. You need to be ready for a judge who doesn't want to hear the full story yet." Meaning, I could do everything right and still get clipped. That's the part nobody wants to admit. The system isn't built to protect you from a charming liar with a good outfit and a fake smile. Patricia filed our response with the Suffolk County Probate and Family Court that afternoon. She also filed a motion to dismiss the petition and requested sanctions for a bad faith guardianship filing, because apparently judges don't love when people weaponize the court system to steal. Good. Then we waited for Dr. Harris's written report, because that report was my shield. And here's where things got ugly. That night, Michael Miller called. Not a text, a call. I didn't want to answer. I did anyway, because some part of me still hoped my son would say, "Mom, I'm sorry. I messed up." Instead, Michael came in hot. "Mom, what are you doing?" he said. "Jessica got arrested because of you." I kept my voice steady. "Jessica got in trouble because of Jessica." Michael snapped. "She said you baited her." She said you're trying to ruin our marriage. I almost laughed. By not letting her poison me? Silence. Then his voice went colder. You need help. You need to stop making things up. And there it was. The script. The same word choices. Like she'd written it and handed it to him. I said, Michael, you're on the wrong side of this. He hissed, she's my wife. I said, and I'm your mother. Michael didn't answer. He just exhaled. Hard. We have a hearing coming. If you cooperate, this can be easier. Cooperate. That word made my skin crawl. Because in their world, cooperate meant hand over control. I said, I've got an attorney. Michael's voice sharpened. Of course you do. End quote. Then he hung up on me like I was a telemarketer. Linda was sitting at my Cape Cod kitchen table when that call ended, staring at me like she wanted to throw my phone into the sink. She's got him, Linda said. I stared at the wall for a second and whispered, I know. And I hated myself for still caring. 2 days later, Dr. Harris's report came in. Patricia called me early and said, Susan, it's clean, strong, very strong. I drove back into Boston that morning with the report printed in a folder like it was a passport. Patricia highlighted the key lines. No cognitive impairment, intact memory, intact judgment, fully capable of managing finances and daily living. Paper armor. Patricia filed it with the court immediately, and I thought, for one stupid second, that maybe Jessica would back off once she realized her confused old woman story had just been punched in the mouth by a medical professional. Nope. Jessica didn't back off. She escalated. The hearing got scheduled fast. It wasn't a full trial. It was one of those preliminary court appearances where everyone shows up pretending they're reasonable while they sharpen knives under the table. The morning of the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse with Patricia and Linda, freezing in a wool coat because Boston doesn't care about your stress. It was gray and windy and loud with traffic, and I felt like I was walking into a place where strangers could decide my life in 15 minutes. Patricia leaned close and said, You don't speak unless I tell you to. You keep your face neutral. You let me do the fighting. I nodded. My jaw was clenched so hard my teeth hurt. Inside the courtroom, the air smelled like old wood and nervous sweat. People in cheap suits, people in expensive suits, people clutching folders like life rafts. And then I saw them. Michael, shoulders tight, eyes tired. Jessica, hair perfect, outfit crisp, playing concerned wife like she was on a stage. She glanced at me and gave me a tiny smile, like we were sharing a joke. She had some nerve. Patricia didn't even look at Jessica. She looked straight ahead like Jessica was a speck of dust. When our case got called, Jessica's attorney started talking about safety and erratic behavior and paranoia. He used every soft word that sounds harmless until you realize it's a cage. Then Patricia stood up. Patricia introduced herself, then calmly laid out the facts. Unlawful entries, video recordings, lab report, police report, prescription bottle, the smear campaign, calls to my building, and most importantly, Dr. Harris's competency evaluation. Patricia held the report up like it was a weapon. Your Honor, my client is not incapacitated. She is being targeted. And Jessica's attorney tried to wave it off. We haven't had a chance to review. Patricia cut him off. It was filed properly, and if they want a chance to review, they can stop trying to steal her autonomy. End quote. The judge, stern, tired, not easily impressed, leaned forward and asked Jessica's attorney, if there is a police report and lab report alleging poisoning, why is a guardianship petition being pursued instead of a protective process through law enforcement? That question hit like a hammer. Jessica's attorney stuttered something about concern and family conflict. The judge looked at Jessica. Jessica dabbed at her eye like she was holding back tears. I just want her safe. It's Relly. I wanted to stand up and scream. You poured drugs into my sugar. Patricia's hand touched my arm, subtle. Don't. So I didn't. The judge made a call that both relieved me and scared me. He did not grant guardianship, but he also didn't dismiss the petition on the spot. Instead, he ordered a court investigator to do a home visit and an independent evaluation as a procedural step to protect all parties. And he set another hearing date, procedural step, neutral language, big consequences. Walking out of that courtroom, Linda muttered, "They didn't win." Patricia said, "Not yet, but don't celebrate. They can still make this messy." Jessica proved her dedication to messy about 5 minutes later. Outside the courthouse, in the hallway, she stepped right into my path, like we were in a bad movie. Michael hovered behind her, like he didn't know where to put his hands. Jessica's voice was sweet. "Susan, we can still do this the easy way." I stared at her. "There is no easy way after what you did." Her smile thinned. "You're going to regret this." Patricia stepped between us like a wall. "Do not speak to my client." Jessica's eyes flicked to Patricia, then back to me, and her voice went low enough only we could hear. "You can't be alone forever," she said. "People get forgetful." Then she turned and walked away like she hadn't just threatened me in a courthouse hallway. Michael didn't even look at me. He followed her. Linda whispered, "If I ever see her alone." Patricia cut her off. "Don't. We win with paperwork and proof." That night, back at my Cape Cod house, I slept with my phone on the pillow next to me like it was a lifeline. I kept checking my camera app even though my apartment was hours away. I didn't feel paranoid. I felt prepared. Around midnight, Patricia texted me, "Court investigator will contact you within 8 hours. Keep everything documented." I texted back, "Got it." End quote. Then, at 4:57 a.m., my phone rang. Not a text, not an alert, a call. Unknown number. I answered on instinct, and a man's voice hit my ear, urgent and shaky. "Miss Miller? This is Leo Johnson. I'm the overnight doorman at your building." My heart kicked hard. Leo continued, "I'm sorry to wake you. Your daughter-in-law is downstairs with 3 men and a moving truck. She says she owns your apartment and she's here to take your furniture." It was happening. The big move. And you know what's wild? My hands didn't shake the way you'd expect. My voice came out calm. Because Patricia had warned me this day would come. "Leo," I said, "listen carefully. Do not block her. Let her in." Linda sat up in the guest room down the hall like she'd been shot out of a cannon. I heard her door open. I heard her bare feet hit the floor. Leo sounded confused. "Ma'am? Let her in," I repeated. "But you make her sign the lobby log with her full name. And you make her show her driver's license. You write down the ID number." Leo hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "And you tell her you're required to do it for building security." Linda appeared in my kitchen in sweatpants, eyes wide. I put the call on speaker. Linda mouthed, "This is it." Leo said, "She's arguing with me. She's saying she doesn't have to." I said, "She does. And you stay calm. If she refuses, you tell her you'll call the police." Leo inhaled, shaky. "Okay. She's signing." I closed my eyes for half a second. "Say your real name." Leo said, "She's showing me her license. I'm writing it down." "Good." Then Leo added, "The movers have empty boxes." Of course they did. And right then, my camera app chimed motion detected at my apartment entryway. I tapped it so fast my thumb hurt. The hallway camera inside my unit caught the door frame. The living room camera caught the front area. And through the peephole angle, I saw shadows shifting in the hall. Jessica's voice came through faintly, sharp and bossy. "Hurry up! We don't have all day." Linda leaned over my shoulder. 3 men?" Leo said 3. I whispered. The door handle jiggled. Then Jessica's voice, louder, frustrated. "Are you kidding me?" She tried the old key. It didn't work. Then she tried another key. Also didn't work. She didn't know I'd changed the locks again after the last incident. I'd upgraded to a deadbolt that wasn't playing games. You could hear her breathing get faster through the audio. You could hear the little panic crack in her control. One of the movers, male voice, unfamiliar, said, "Lady, we can't break in. That's illegal." Jessica snapped, "It's not breaking in. I have authority." Then she did it. She pulled out paperwork. On camera, I watched her hold up a folded document, waving it like a magic wand in front of grown men. "My power of attorney," she said. "See? This is legal." One of the movers leaned in and squinted. "That signature looks off. Bless that man." Jessica's tone went icy. "Do you want to get paid or not?" The other mover said, "We're getting paid either way." Jessica's jaw clenched. "Fine, I'll make it worth your time." Then she said a number that made my eyebrows shoot up. "I'll give you $3,000 cash," Jessica said. "Right now?" Linda's mouth dropped. She brought cash. End quote. Jessica was buying a crime. One mover whistled softly. $3,000? The mover who'd questioned the signature backed up. "Nope, I'm out. I'm not catching charges for this." He stepped away from the door and walked out of frame. Two stayed. Of course they did. And here's the part that made my stomach roll. Jessica looked right into the hallway like she was daring the universe to stop her. Then she pulled a tool from one of the boxes. Something metal. Flat. A pry bar. She handed it to one of the movers. He hesitated, then slid it into the seam by my lock like he'd done it before. Metal scraped. My lock groaned. Linda whispered, "Call 911. I already had my phone in my hand. When the operator answered, I said, "Active burglary in progress. I'm watching it live on camera. They're forcing entry." The operator asked the address, and I gave it. Unit number, building entrance, suspect description, moving truck, 3 men, 1 woman. I gave her everything, like I was reading a script, because in a way, I was. This is what preparation looks like. While I was on with 911, the pry bar worked. The deadbolt popped. The door swung open. And Jessica stepped into my home like she owned it. She walked straight to my living room, eyes scanning like she was shopping. Then she pointed and started ordering the movers around. "That sofa first," she said. "Then the dining table. And those vases. Those vases belong to my mother." Linda made a sound like she was choking on rage. The movers started dragging furniture, bumping corners, scraping wood against floor. My cameras caught it all. Clear audio, clear video, clear intent. Jessica wasn't whispering. She wasn't hiding. She was commanding. Then she did something that gave me the turning key I didn't know I needed. Her phone rang. Jessica answered. And she didn't bother to lower her voice, because she was high on control. "Yeah, Mom," she said. "I'm inside." I hopes. Linda and I looked at each other. Her mother, Jessica continued, pacing through my living room while my furniture scraped behind her. No, the tea didn't work like I thought. She had that friend watching her. My skin went cold. Jessica kept talking, casual, like she was discussing a bad recipe. "So I put it in her sugar," she said. "That worked better. Now, the court thing is in motion. Once she looks unstable, it's done." Linda's hand flew to her mouth. I stared at the screen, barely breathing. Jessica laughed, short and mean. "And yeah, her son signed. He'll do whatever I tell him." That sentence landed like a punch to my ribs. Then Jessica said the line that turned this from burglary into, "I'm done playing nice." "She thinks she's smart with her little cameras," Jessica said. "But once we clear the apartment, she's got nothing left." Nothing left. Furniture, documents, memories, my life. And the whole time she was talking, my camera was recording her confession like it was gift wrapped. You can't unsay a confession. Linda grabbed my arm hard. "Did you hear that?" "I heard it," I whispered. And while Jessica was still on the phone, the hallway camera caught flashing lights again. This time, it wasn't slow. It was fast. Boston police moved down the hall in a cluster, and you could hear boots, radios, urgency. They hit my open door like a wave. One officer barked, "Police, step away." The movers froze. One of them put his hands up instantly, like he regretted every choice that led him here. Jessica turned, mouth open, still holding her phone, still mid-sentence. Wait. An officer grabbed her wrist and pulled her phone down. Jessica started talking fast, scrambling. This is my mother-in-law's place. I have paperwork. The officer cut her off. Ma'am, you're being detained. Jessica's voice went high. No, you don't understand. End quote. And then, on camera, I watched the handcuffs go on. Not questioning, not a warning. Cuffs. The movers got pulled into the hallway one by one, hands out, faces pale. One officer looked into my apartment like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Furniture half moved, pry bar on my floor. My life turned into a crime scene. I was sitting in a Cape Cod kitchen, watching my Boston apartment fill with cops. And I felt something snap into place inside me. This wasn't he said, she said anymore. This was evidence, witnesses, and a recorded confession. Linda whispered, "She's finished." Not yet, but the tide had turned. Detective Mark Davis called me within minutes. His voice sounded like chaos behind him. "Miss Miller, we have Jessica Rodriguez in custody," he said. "2 movers are detained. 1 left the scene earlier. We're canvassing." I said, "I have audio of her admitting she drugged my tea and sugar." And she admitted the guardianship plan. There was a pause. Then Detective Davis said, "Do you have that recorded?" "Yes," I said. "It's on camera, time-stamped." "Do not delete it," he said. "Forward it to my secure email and your attorney." Patricia texted me at the same time. "Send me the confession clip now." So I did. I clipped the exact section, Jessica, saying the tea didn't work, the sugar did, the court plan was in motion, and I sent it to Patricia and Detective Davis like my thumbs were on fire. Linda stood behind me, shaking her head slowly. She really said it out loud. I stared at my phone and whispered. She thought she was untouchable. Then Patricia called. Her voice was tight but controlled. "Susan, I just heard it." I said, "Yeah?" Patricia exhaled once. "That audio is the weapon. That ends the civil case. That strengthens the criminal case. That makes her dangerous, not just greedy. Dangerous." That word felt accurate in a way mean never did. Patricia continued, "Stay in Cape Cod. Do not go back to the apartment until the police clear it. And do not speak to Michael." My phone buzzed again Michael's name, like the universe was trying to test my self-control. I didn't answer. Some calls don't deserve a response. A few hours later, Detective Davis called again to tell me the movers were being questioned. My apartment was sealed as a crime scene, and the pry bar had been bagged. He said, "We're also pulling the lobby sign-in log and doorman statement. Leo Johnson. The log. The license. Every detail stacked like bricks." Then Detective Davis added one more sentence that made Linda and me stare at each other. "Ma'am, based on the lab report and the confession, the ADA is looking at adding attempted poisoning to the charges." Attempted poisoning. Not family disagreement. Not miscommunication. Not she meant well. Attempted poisoning. I hung up and sat there in silence for a second, staring at the ocean through my Cape Cod window like it didn't know my life had just exploded. Linda finally said, "Are you okay?" I let out one breath, then another. "No, but I'm ready. It's this. And if you're thinking you'd have collapsed, trust me, I get it. But anger will hold you upright when grief can't." That night, Patricia emailed me a transcript-style summary of the confession clip with timestamps, and she told me to keep a copy in 3 places. I printed it, put it in my fireproof pouch, and stared at the paper like it was radioactive. Jessica's own words. My son's betrayal. The plan. The poison. Then I did something I didn't expect. I played the clip again. Not because I wanted to torture myself, because I wanted to make sure it was real. And when I heard Jessica say, "So I put it in her sugar," I felt the last shred of doubt leave my body. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was a confession. I found the weapon. Cut to black. And you'd have saved that audio in 4 places too. That confession didn't just save me. It buried her. And you know what? You're going to want to hear how fast a liar falls apart when the courtroom hears the audio. Patricia Collins called me the morning after the 5 a.m. break-in, and her voice was pure steel. Susan, we're not waiting. We're filing emergency motions today. Linda Parker was already at my Cape Cod kitchen table with coffee and a legal pad, like we were running a command center. She looked up at me and said, "You ready?" Ready isn't the word, but I nodded anyway. So we drove back to Boston that same day. Not because I wanted to be near my apartment, because the only way out of a legal mess is straight through it. Patricia met us in her office with printed transcripts, timestamps, and the cleanest copy of that confession clip you could imagine. She'd already emailed the ADA on the criminal case and the court clerk on the guardianship petition. "Here's what happens," Patricia said, laying it out like a checklist. "First, we use the confession to push charges and tighten bail conditions. Second, we destroy their civil petition with the same audio. Third, we lock you down with a protective order. And fourth, we make sure your son can't sign another piece of paper on your behalf ever again." Good. Patricia forwarded the clip to Detective Mark Davis again, plus the doorman log, plus Tom's building notes, plus the mover's information. She also requested the hallway camera footage from building security showing the pry bar and the moving truck. Then Patricia looked at me and said, "You will not look like the emotional mother in court. You're the victim with evidence." I said, "What about Michael?" Patricia didn't sugarcoat it. "Michael's a witness to your story, not your shield." That sentence landed hard, because every mom wants her kid to be her safe place. Not mine. By late afternoon, Detective Davis called with an update. The movers had been questioned. One of them admitted Jessica offered cash. Another admitted she waived power of attorney papers that didn't match any court order. Detective Davis said, "Miss Miller, we also recovered the vial you mentioned. It was in her tote." My skin crawled. Detective Davis continued, "The ADA is taking this seriously. There will be a bail hearing." Bail hearing. Not a family meeting. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared of Jessica getting out, because I kept hearing her voice in my head, smug as can be. So I put it in her sugar. And the part that hit the deepest wasn't the poison. It was her saying, "He'll do whatever I tell him." She wasn't just attacking me. She was wearing my son like a costume. The bail hearing happened 2 days later at the courthouse in Boston. Patricia told me to dress simple. No pearls, no drama. Let the evidence be loud, she said. Linda came with me and sat a row behind, like backup. Detective Davis sat off to the side in a suit that looked like he'd slept in it. The ADA Assistant District Attorney Melissa Brown was organized, calm, and clearly not amused. Jessica walked in wearing jail-issued clothes under a blazer someone had probably delivered to her, and her hair was still perfect. She looked around like she was checking who was watching. Her eyes landed on me, and she smiled. I didn't. Some people don't understand consequences until they're wearing them. Jessica's attorney started with the usual nonsense. "This is a misunderstanding. Family conflict. My client was invited. She was concerned for her mother-in-law's safety." Concern. That word again. Then ADA Brown stood up and said, "Your Honor, we have video evidence of unlawful entry, forced entry with a tool, theft, and suspected tampering with food products. We also have audio evidence of the defendant admitting she placed sedatives into the victim's tea and sugar." The courtroom got quiet in that sharp way, like everyone's ears leaned in. Jessica's attorney said, "Objection." The judge held up a hand. "Counsel, is the Commonwealth prepared to play the recording?" Ada Brown said, "Yes, Your Honor." Jessica's smile flickered, barely. But it happened. The judge looked at her over his glasses and said, "Miss Rodriguez, you may want to listen carefully." Then the clerk hit play. My kitchen speakers weren't the only ones that day. Her own words filled the courtroom, flat and clear. Her laugh, her casual tone, the way she said tea and sugar like she was talking about grocery shopping. And then her voice said, "So I put it in her sugar. That worked better." You could feel the room shift. Jessica's face went stiff. Her attorney leaned toward her, whispering fast. The judge's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. ADA Brown didn't stop there. She played the line about the court plan. Once she looks unstable, it's done. And then the line about my son. He'll do whatever I tell him. That one made my throat tighten. Linda sucked in a breath behind me like she was about to stand up and fight. Then ADA Brown said, "This was not concern. This was a plan." Jessica's attorney tried to recover. "Your Honor, even if those statements were made in anger," the judge cut him off. "Counsel, those are not statements made in anger. Those are statements made in execution." Execution. That's a judge word you don't want used about your behavior. Jessica's face changed then. The confidence drained, and something mean took its place. She leaned forward and hissed something to her attorney. I couldn't hear it, but I could see her jaw working, her eyes flashing like a cornered animal. Denial doesn't look pretty when the truth is on speakers. ADA Brown laid out the rest. The lab report showing benzodiazepines, the urgent care toxicology paperwork, the private lab confirmation on the sugar, the pry bar, the movers, the cash offer, the doorman log with Jessica's name and license details. Every brick, every receipt, every step. Then Patricia stood up and asked to address the court briefly on my behalf as the victim's attorney. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She said, "Your Honor, my client is a competent adult being targeted for financial exploitation and chemical impairment. We ask for no contact conditions, a stay-away order, and strict bail terms if bail is even considered." The judge looked at Jessica and said, "Miss Rodriguez, do you understand the seriousness of what has been presented?" Jessica sat up straighter and tried to put the mask back on. "Yes, Your Honor. I was trying to help." The judge stared at her. "By forcing entry with a pry bar and admitting to drugging someone's food?" Jessica opened her mouth, then shut it. She looked at her attorney like he'd promised her this wouldn't happen. Panic finally showed up on her face, plain as day. The judge ruled quickly. No bail that day. Held pending further proceedings, with an order of protection issued immediately. No contact with me. No contact with my residents. No contact through third parties. That last part mattered, because Jessica loved using Michael as her messenger. When the judge finished, Jessica turned her head and glared at me like I'd done something to her. "Lady, you did this to yourself." Outside the courtroom, Michael was waiting in the hallway. I hadn't expected him there. My stomach tightened the second I saw him. He looked wrecked, eyes red, face pale, shoulders hunched like he'd been carrying a cinder block. He stepped toward me. "Mom." 9. Patricia's hand lifted slightly, a silent reminder. Don't get pulled into emotion in a courthouse hallway. I stopped walking anyway. Michael's voice cracked. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Linda made a sound under her breath like, "Give me a break." I stared at my son and said, "You signed legal papers against me." Michael flinched. "She said you were." "Stop," I said. "Don't repeat her words." Michael swallowed. "She told me you were declining, that you were hiding it, that you needed help." I asked, "And the break-ins, the sugar, the pry bar?" Michael's eyes darted away. "She said you set her up." Patricia stepped forward. "Michael, your wife admitted to drugging Susan. On audio, in court, today. If you're still standing here arguing, you're part of the problem." Michael's face folded like he'd been slapped. He whispered, "I'm sorry. Here's the messy truth. I wanted to hug him, and I also wanted to scream. So I did neither. I said, 'You're my son. But you're not in charge of me. Not now. Not ever.' One of the hardest things a mother can do is stop rescuing her child from the consequences of his choices." Michael asked, "What do you want me to do?" Linda answered before I could. "Tell the truth," Patricia added, "and get your own attorney." Michael nodded slowly, like the world was finally catching up to him. Then he said something that made my stomach drop again. "She's going to blame me. Linda snapped. Good. That. Michael looked like he might cry again. I don't have anywhere to go. That was the first time I saw it clearly. Jessica didn't just target me. She isolated him too. She had him wrapped up, and now the wrap was tightening. But I wasn't about to let him crawl into my home like nothing happened. I said, go stay with a friend. Figure it out. Michael stared at me like he couldn't believe I wasn't offering him my couch. Maybe I'm harsh. But I'm harsh with boundaries. Michael nodded once, stiff and embarrassed, and walked away down the hallway like a kid who finally realized Mom isn't fixing it this time. Patricia exhaled and said, you did the right thing. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. The civil case, the guardianship petition, died next. And it died fast. Patricia filed an emergency motion with the probate court, attaching Dr. Daniel Harris's competency evaluation and the criminal court audio transcript. She also attached the protective order and the criminal charges as proof that the guardianship petition wasn't concern. It was a tactic. The probate judge scheduled a short hearing within the week. When we walked into that courtroom, Jessica wasn't there. She couldn't be. She was in custody, and she had a no-contact order. Michael was there, though, with a new attorney and a face that looked older than it should. Jessica's attorney tried to keep the civil case alive. The family still has concerns. The judge held up a hand and said, Counsel, your client is facing criminal allegations for attempting to chemically impair this petitioner. Why is this petition still on my docket? Silence. The judge flipped through the documents and said, Dr. Harris's report is clear. The petitioner is competent. The allegations in this guardianship petition are not supported by evidence. Then the judge looked directly at Michael. Mr. 2. Miller, he said, you signed this petition. Do you understand the severity of trying to strip someone's rights without basis? Michael's voice was small. Yes, Your Honor. The judge didn't yell. He didn't have to. His disappointment did the work. He dismissed the petition on the spot. Dismissed. He also granted Patricia's request for a protective order extension and ordered that any future petition related to my capacity would require heightened scrutiny, basically meaning, don't try this again unless you've got real proof. Then came the salt in the wound. Patricia asked the judge to consider sanctions court penalties for filing in bad faith. The judge didn't go nuclear, but he did order Michael and Jessica to pay my legal fees related to the guardianship action. Not symbolic fees, real fees. And the judge made it clear in open court that this filing looked weaponized. Michael went pale. That's what happens when you drag your mother into court because your wife told you to. Outside that probate courtroom, Michael tried again. Mom, please, I can fix this. I looked at him and said, you can't fix what you didn't stop. He flinched. Linda leaned close to me and whispered, he needed to hear that. He did. Back on the criminal side, the case moved like a freight train once the audio and lab results were in. The ADA didn't treat it as petty theft. She treated it like a pattern. Unlawful entry, attempted poisoning, theft, witness manipulation, and an attempted legal takeover. Jessica's attorney pushed for a deal. Jessica pushed back at first, because she still thought she could charm her way out. Then she saw the evidence list. Security logs, doorman statement from Leo Johnson, building manager notes from Tom, video from my cameras, hallway footage, the pry bar, the vial, the lab, the confession audio, and the movers. Those two movers, they didn't want charges hanging over their heads. One of them took a deal to cooperate. The other one told the truth to save himself. Their statements matched my footage. She offered cash. She demanded they force entry. She waived authority papers. Jessica's story kept changing. That's how you know someone's lying. The plea hearing came a month later, not a full jury trial, because Jessica didn't want 12 people hearing that audio and seeing her smug face on video. In court, she stood there with her shoulders stiff, eyes glassy, pretending she was the victim of miscommunication. Ada Brown wasn't buying it. She laid out the recommended sentence based on the seriousness: jail time, probation with strict conditions, mandatory mental health evaluation, restitution for damages and theft, and a permanent protective order. Jessica's attorney argued for leniency. First-time offender, family conflict. Ada Brown cut him off. She attempted to chemically impair a woman and steal her home. Then the judge asked if the victim wanted to speak. Patricia looked at me. Only if you want. It's a dad of ideas. Here's what I did say, and I kept it short because I didn't want tears to become anyone's excuse. I stood up and said, "Your Honor, she didn't just steal my things. She tried to steal my mind." The room went quiet. I added, "She used my son to do it." Jessica stared at the floor. The judge sentenced her. Not a slap on the wrist, not time served and go home. Real time in county jail, followed by probation, no contact, and restitution. The judge also made it clear, any violation, she'd be back in custody. Jessica's face finally cracked. That fake calm broke, and her eyes went wide like she'd just realized she isn't special. She started crying. Not pretty crying, angry crying. Her attorney tried to guide her away, and she twisted her head and looked right at me, like she wanted me to feel sorry for her. I didn't. Karma doesn't care about your mascara. The marriage didn't survive. Obviously, Michael filed for divorce. He didn't do it dramatically. He did it quietly, like a man swallowing broken glass. He showed up at Patricia's office one afternoon, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks, and said, "I messed up." Patricia didn't coddle him. She said, "Yes, you did." Michael asked me for forgiveness. I didn't give him a clean, movie-style answer. I told him the truth. "I love you, and I don't trust you right now." He nodded like he deserved it, because he did. We set new boundaries, no keys, no access, no help. If he wanted a relationship with me, he'd earn it slowly, with actions, not guilt. And yeah, that hurt him. It also saved me. Financially, my money stayed protected. My accounts were locked. My credit was frozen. My will and healthcare paperwork were updated with Patricia, and Linda was named as my backup decision maker if anything ever happened. Not my son, not after this. Socially, Jessica's little concern campaign died in the sunlight. Frank from 3B apologized for even answering her call. Tom documented everything and told me, if she ever comes back, we call police immediately. Leo, the doorman, he became my favorite person in that building. He said, "Miss Miller, I've seen a lot in this job, but that was something else." Legally, the protective order stayed in place. The guardianship petition was dismissed. My legal fees were ordered paid. Jessica had a record. And everybody who mattered had heard her own voice confess. Emotionally, look, I'm not going to pretend this didn't change me. It changed how I see my son. It changed how I trust people who smile too fast. It changed how I lock my doors. But it also gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. A few weeks after everything settled, I went back to my Boston apartment for the first time without my stomach tying itself in knots. The new locks clicked clean. The cameras blinked steady. My furniture was back where it belonged, repaired and replaced with restitution money where it could be. And my husband's watch? The police recovered it from Jessica's tote during processing. Detective Davis handed it to me in an evidence bag like it was nothing. But to me, it felt like getting a piece of my life returned. I held it in my palm and whispered, "Not today." That night, I made coffee in my own kitchen and used a brand new sugar container like a normal human being. I sat at my table and listened to the city sounds outside my window. And for the first time in months, my body unclenched. You know what's funny? Jessica thought she was the smartest person in the room. Turns out she was just the loudest. If you want more stories like this, real life, real receipts, hit subscribe, because I'm not the only one who's been targeted like this. And if you've ever dealt with a helper who was really a hunter, you're not alone.